Welcome to Easy China. This is Li Jiazhang in Beijing. Today, my guest is Mei Zhang, and she's a lady, very enterprising, outstanding lady from Yunnan.
Thank you.
And Harvard MBA graduate, and the founder of Wild China. Today, we're going to talk about her company, traveling, and anything and everything you need to know about traveling in China. A warm welcome to you, Mei.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, the name, Wild China. So to me, it suggests Wild China suggests some, traveling in some uncharted territory. But from what I can gather, your company targets at a higher-end market. Is that, where are the wild things?
Where are the wild things? Very good question. I got this question from day one. Well, it originated from wilderness. Yes, when you talk about the word wilderness, you have images of forests, pristine lakes, etc. But what I wanted word Wild China to mean is not just the physical, unexplored, beautiful part of China, but also the more in-depth, beautiful part of Chinese culture, including our history, the ethnic cultures around the whole country, the very rich culinary cultures, etc., etc. Those are the territories of part of China that people don't have easy access to.
Right.
So hence I called it Wild China. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, this is what puzzles me because generally speaking, wild and luxury don't often go together. But maybe before we go further talking about your company, you can talk about a bit more about yourself. You're from Yunnan. Are you ethnic minority, exotic Tibetan, Bai or Nashi or?
I often say I'm either a Tibetan wannabe or a Bai wannabe.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who want to be a Tibetan because people often ask me, are you Tibetan? Because I guess because of my dark skin, and often I pretend I'm Tibetan princess, so in that way, I won't be. Yes, a Manchurian had to be the noble, so I won't disappoint people. But I guess in your case, you want to be Tibetan. There's a point. Tibet has become a very, hot tourist destination. So I guess being a Tibetan would be quite helpful.
I'd love to, but there's another side. I mean, I'm a Tibetan wannabe as well as a Bai wannabe. The Bai is one of the major ethnic groups in Yunnan. Yunnan is, as you know, in southwest China. Mm. And I grew up there in Dali, and later on went to school in Kunming. But growing up with the Bai culture had a lot of influence of my appreciation of what's beautiful and what's interesting. So growing up in Dali, I remember my father used to carry me in one of those bamboo baskets.
Just like a Bai people.
Just like Bai people. I would be one of those little kids in the basket going to the market. And on the way...
Even though you are just a Han, like me.
The lifestyle is very similar.
All right, okay.
Lifestyle is very similar. And, there was a lot of exchange. The Bai people may be the supplier of eggs and poultry or... vegetables in the market, and the Han workers, which is what my family was, my dad, they would be the shoppers there. But there were a lot of times when Bai people got sick, they needed access to clinics or doctors. They would come to the work unit where my father used to work. And so there's a lot of exchange.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you went to school, I guess probably a Han school, and then you left China to study abroad, to study MBA. And why did you return? Were you ever tempted to working for American investment bank?
I did, as everybody else who went overseas. Well, one of the very important things to me was I was one of the very, very lucky few.
One mix.
Yes, very lucky because I was working for a bank in Kunming. One day, and the president of the bank, whom I was working for at the time, offered me a scholarship. And he's not Chinese; he's Thai. And he offered me the scholarship, but then he looked at me in my eyes and said, very sincerely, "I think you can do great things, but one thing I want you to promise me: after the scholarship, after Harvard, after Oxford, or wherever you want to go, you have to come back to China.
Right. So you returned to China to honor a promise you made. Was
Absolutely.
That the reason?
Absolutely. Yeah.
To begin with, so how come? How did you get the idea to set up this company?
Well, after 2 years at McKinsey, I said one thing I really wanted to do at that time was to travel. And I did. McKinsey was very generous. I took a half-year sabbatical. And basically, on the backpack, I started from Hong Kong, went to Scandinavia, covered Northern Europe in June. It was absolutely beautiful. And Switzerland, the whole Europe was
I just come back from Switzerland.
So you know what I'm talking about. It's absolutely lovely. And then I took a flight all the way down to the south, very southern tip, South Africa. In South Africa, I spent a whole month traveling in between those Kruger National Park and Cape Town, all those beautiful places in South Africa. I was stunned.
After all this traveling, you didn't want to go back to the office?
Well, not yet. That was only in the first month of my travel. That was the first month. But then, it was all beautiful and I was enjoying myself. But what really turned the corner was when I was drinking wine, or doing wine tasting in a small town
very civilized.
near Cape Town, and my phone rang. The partner at McKinsey, who was heading a project, a pro bono project for the Nature Conservancy, called me and said, "We have this project that we are interested in helping the Nature Conservancy to explore a sustainable way of conservation and development in Yunnan, your hometown. Would you be interested in coming back to do that?" Of course, I said I had to jump on that opportunity. So I came back for a brief pre-project visit.
Right.
And then because it landed me right in Yunnan, I got to see some beautiful places.
Right, of course, yes. That's the area you are very familiar with, of course.
Yes. And then I traveled along the Silk Road, onto Tibet, into Nepal.
As part of the job?
No, after the sort of project assessment stage.
Oh, right, okay.
But I committed to coming back in about 3 or 4 months when I'm done with my travels. And to be honest, those 3 or 4 months that they allowed me extra to travel around was a great preparation time for both my study later on for the Nature Conservancy as well as for starting my business.
Welcome back to Easy China. Obviously, traveling is your passion, right?
I love it.
Okay. Well, traveling is my passion too. I'll tell you how I got my travel bug. I worked at a missile factory for 10 years. I just felt, for 10 years I felt I was trapped there. So every day I dreamed of, breaking away and traveling, seeing the bigger world. So now after my factory so I'm now just being roaming around the world. So where did you get your travel bug? Was that from your childhood and being in a beautiful area in Yunnan? How did you get your travel bug?
It's probably in my blood. It's a little hard to say, but I remember when I was in college, there were a few changes. Still in Yunnan, at Yunnan University. There were a few American students who came there, and I was 16, 17, and the kids who came were about the same age, and I just looked at them so sort of envious of the opportunity they have. I'm like, I wish someday I could do the same. I could roam the world. I think a lot of us, those days you used to write journals. You keep your personal journals, and you talk about, when I grow up, what do I want to do? I want to explore the world. I actually, incidentally, I looked back in my journals a few years back, and I found when I grew up, the place I wanted to go study was Harvard. And the 2 places I really wanted to go, one was Paris, one was London. And so that's what I did when I actually got to HBS, had the first winter break when I was able to travel around the world. That's where I went.
You went to Paris?
I went to London, Paris.
London, and you didn't see the fog.
I didn't mind it.
Maybe you can share some of your, traveling in China, the memorable ones.
I have some incredible experiences traveling in China. I think it depends on how much time you have. I'll tell you one that I'm most scared of my own safety was I backpacked from the very,
As we all did.
Yeah,
exactly. Our younger years.
Right. I backpacked from Kashgar, which is a very western tip on the map. It borders China and Pakistan right at the tip.
In Xinjiang, yes.
In Xinjiang, right. I started from there and hitchhiked in the cabin of an oil tanker all the way up.
Actually, exactly the same years.
Did you really?
Hitchhiked. Okay.
It's one of the funny things that when you hitchhike, you negotiate a fare to sit in the cabin. And it was like 200 kwai. That was more than 15 years ago. I said, okay, fine. It turned out that 2 seats in the cabin, the driver sold it to 3 people.
Oh, right. So you have to be...
A third of the time, you're sort of like half of you is hanging off the seat. You're not really... Right.
So then you get to that... Where did you go? Where did you end up? You went to Tibet?
I went up to Tibet. The Xinjiang-Lhasa highway, so-called highway, it's just because elevation's high. Really?
How does one refer to speed or the quality of the road?
No, the speed. I remember one night I fell asleep. The first night, I fell asleep for on and off 8 hours. I opened my eyes. The moment I got in the truck, it was still probably, I would say, 85 degrees. By the time I woke up, it was all snow outside. It was just covered in snow. We were already on the Tibetan Plateau. And then I looked at the milestone. I think we went about 125 kilometers.
Wow.
A whole night. So, but elevation-wise, I don't know. We probably went up like 2 miles or something. Anyway, after 5 days of hardship, I got to Mount Kailash, and Mount Kailash is considered probably the most sacred mountain.
Yes, the holy mountain.
Right. The Tibetan monks, the Buddhists, and the Hindus, they all go there to pay pilgrimage. In fact, a lot of Tibetan Bon is their local ethnic religion. A lot of the very senior pilgrims consider themselves very lucky if they eventually end their life there on the mountain, unintentionally, I mean. So I got there, and I said I wanted to hike around the mountain as well. The mountain looks like a pyramid, 4-sided. On the very southern face, it has a snow sort of sign. It's a naturally formed on the rock face. It looks like a swastika, but in an opposite orientation.
So we're still waiting for the danger part.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got carried away by the story. Anyway, I took off hiking, just myself, 2 hours into the hike. A dog showed up in front of me. 2 minutes later, another dog showed up behind me.
Very brave to travel on your own, a young lady.
Well, I've always had good luck. Throughout my journey, people always sort of helped me out. So at that young age, you have a very positive attitude and towards like whatever is going to happen, you can deal with it. But anyway,
people probably less dangerous than those animals. They were also
no. On this journey, it was the dogs that scared me.
Okay.
And they just walked a few steps before me, behind me, to my left, to my right, at the same pace for 2 hours. They wouldn't leave me, and I turned a corner. On the side, there was a little...
Did you for a moment thought they were just keeping you company?
Yeah, for a moment I thought, they were just, thought I was lonely and keeping me company. Then a bunny showed up, a wild sort of rabbit, was running off very fast. The 4 dogs took after the bunny. Same strategy, surrounding the bunny, and took that prey. In a matter of minutes.
Could just go the same
way. It just
yes.
occurred to me at that moment that I could be that one. They were probably waiting for me to, be beaten by fatigue and just collapse. And then one more thing I realized, there were lots of dogs in Tibet.
Yes,
right
I saw quite a few of these in La Brun and quite a few, yes.
Right, and right in front of me, I realized there was a platform, a rock platform, which was the sky burial.
Sky burial. Why is the sky burial Tibetans? That's you explain. You're the expert. But anyway,
the sky burial is basically where the Tibetan, traditional
way of burial. Yes,
traditional way of burial by presenting the body in a way that.
So dissection the body, and then the body, the flesh will be eaten by dogs and by birds.
Because they believe life came from nature, therefore return back to nature. That could have been me.
That could be tied in a dramatic way. Looking back, you obviously enjoy telling the story. So, in some ways, you enjoy the thrill of traveling, of adventure. So, my next question is that challenging for you to provide comfort, or sometimes cases luxury? Meanwhile, give your clients, all these tourists come to China traveling with you, a sense of adventure.
Exactly. I mean, I did that. I had all the thrill, but I had 6 months to spare.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how many people have 6 months to spare? That's very hard. And by the time I finished my travels, I realized China is so incredibly rich and beautiful, both in natural sceneries and culture, but it's extremely hard to access.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's
you don't know where to start if you
don't know where to start.
Yeah.
You don't know what's available there, and the language barrier can be totally daunting, mm-hmm. and the time it takes just physically to mm-hmm. get from A to B mm-hmm. Takes a long time. And I look at around me a lot of the executives or people who eventually would be very interested in mm-hmm. working to support conservation. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are businessmen as well, mm-hmm. or politicians. They're very busy people. Yes, yeah. And how do they have any chance to see what I saw? And I felt...
So you saw the market niche. You want to provide good service.
Absolutely. And this was already available around the world, except China at that time, tourism was just taking off.
Which year did you set up your company?
2000.
So by the time it was already possible, the infrastructure already, there was certain infrastructure already for, receiving tourists, foreign tourists.
Yes, the infrastructure was already shaping up quite well. But the service, the market segmentation, this is probably too technical.
Sounds right.
But
MBA student talking.
Sorry. But at that time, basically, the whole China, the Chinese travel agencies are providing one product. You come to China, you see the Great Wall, you see the Forbidden City, and you go along the Yangtze River, and you go out of Shanghai. That's all you see. Is it worth seeing? Absolutely. Those are the front face of China. But China is a lot richer than that.
You want to provide the best.
I do.
Maybe you can give us some examples of how, if you're very exciting, some of the tailor-made, some others probably you offer, some incredible journeys to Yunnan, for example. Maybe you can give us examples, adventurous but yet luxurious. Give us some examples.
I'll give you, I can talk about 2 examples.
Give us one to start with.
Just one.
Okay, I heard the one boss of the grasslands. That sounds extremely enticing.
The one on the grasslands. That one is one of our pioneer projects. The grassland you're mentioning is in Qinghai, Qinghai province. Qinghai is
the Tibetan area.
The Tibetan area.
The grassland.
And it's not necessarily in Tibet per se, but it's in the neighboring province. And it's the source of the Yellow River and the source of Yangtze. To get there, right now, this year, they just started an airport direct flight operation from the capital city of the province. So it's a lot easier now. It used to take 9 hours by car from the nearest airport. In any event, this place called Yushu, it's a small town in Qinghai.
Tibetan area.
And Tibetans from eastern Tibet are all extremely colorful, and their ancestors.
They're good-looking men.
They're good-looking. They're called Kamba men, and they're known for
very tall, handsome.
Tall, handsome, but they're also very good fighters. They came
every year to have a horse racing festival. Is that right?
Yes. Every July, the Yushu Horse Racing Festival is probably one of the most popular and well-known horse festivals.
Popular among the locals, but not touristy yet.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's not very well known internationally.
Yeah.
Right. But to get to the area, because the horse racing festival takes place on this wide open grassland, the nearest town is about an hour away driving. The local Tibetans, they come with their tents. They set up their tents. They have singing and dancing all day long and all night long. So a lot of things.
It's reinforced the image we saw, the Tibetans jolly a lot and dancing and singing.
The Tibetans, I love that lifestyle. But for a traveler, if you don't have the same infrastructure set up, it's very hard for you.
Living in Washington, D.C., and how could you,
Right. So you always feel like I'm an outside visitor rather than part of the participants.
All right. Okay. So what do you do? What do you offer?
So we set up tents. But to do that...
Not just any ordinary tent, very extremely luxury.
No, we set up these extremely beautiful, large tents. The Tibetan local fans would probably use this one tent for a family of 10 people. But we use it as
for one person or couple.
For one couple. And we put it in a queen-size mattress. And the floor...
Shower? Hot shower every day?
Yes, hot shower. Totally available. And right next...
Flush toilet?
No.
No, right.
But with a toilet seat.
Oh, right.
To be environmentally friendly, we have a toilet tent that's right next door to your own living tent. Okay, so each couple has one.
Oh, right, okay.
And we brought in these toilet seats. You can actually sit on it, and it's all prepped, freshly dug to a certain depth. And when we depart, we can clean it up and to put the grass back. You can't even see a trace that we've been there.
We'll talk about responsible tourism later. But here, the point is, you are in this deeply exotic place, in the grasslands. You can take part of the horse racing festival, but yet you don't have to suffer any discomfort, right?
No, we brought in this group of butlers, but they are all Tibetans that grew up locally. We train them ahead of time, and they have some English, but extremely hospitable. And they will be there upon arrival. They will be there and present you with a white hada, what they call the white scarf, to show their respect, and welcome you into a group tent where you can enjoy a hot coffee or tea, or you can go straight to your room. Your luggage would already be put in your room, and after that drink, you can go back to your room, and everyone likes to freshen up a little bit. During that time, meals are already being prepared.
Roast lamb? What's on the menu?
Roast lamb, some Tibetan dishes, some Tibetan momos, with local wines and local juices that we brought in, all served, all prepared.
All these things you just developed over the years in the very beginning. What was the challenge to get us the company up and running? What kind of challenges you met?
That's the thrill of a startup. You're constantly short of something. In the very beginning, you're not so sure of your product. So you are exploring different ideas to package the products together. And you're short of money, because to hire people to prepare the products, you need money. So while you have maybe 5 staff preparing the products, when I say products, I mean really trips and experiences that we can package together. On the other side, I personally was busy going around and talking to investors and trying to secure funding so that people sign up to work for me. I'm responsible for their well-being. So once you have the initial funding, there were times when I felt like I was going to pull my hair out. Now that you have your products ready, your website is ready, and your funding is ready, where do I find customer?
So you find you don't do local tourism. Your clients, they're all from abroad, right?
Well, this is a very To be honest, it's a practical issue. I think we now will probably consider serving Chinese travelers as well.
Right.
But
okay.
back then, it's a pure matter of affordability and also interest of travel.
I guess it's constant challenge to provide that sense of comfort. Of course, I mean we know that, but to provide that sense of adventure. Some of the trips that we do trekking, is that physically taxing? How? Tell me, how can people get this sense of adventure, the thrill of the, adventure, traveling, the uncertainty, or everything's being arranged?
The truth is, I think people have a certain tolerance of risk. And going into the wilderness to hike in beautiful areas, running into uncontrollable risk is not what they're looking for. I think that's my job, is controlling the unwanted risks. For example, I do not want my guests to walk in those trails and get lost. There are many places. I mean, China, you can walk around and completely get lost. Those are not the risks I want. And I think if a traveler backpacking on their own coming out of such an experience, they may have a good story to tell. Most people with time pressure would not appreciate that. So we scout out all our trips. When I say scout out, we would have our operations team go in there.
Research. Well, yes, that's what I can help. Maybe I can do one of your research.
We have a title for that, the new route development. By the way, that's a job my husband wanted. I can't afford to hire him.
Right, okay. May's husband, John Pumphrey, is a very famous journalist of the Washington Post, and you met. He was one of your clients.
He was. Yes, he was. And he was one of those trusting clients, But I met him because I said, okay, I need to find clients and I don't really have a marketing budget.
Yeah.
So he's a famous journalist. Maybe he'll write about me.
He didn't write. I don't know if it's the same.
No, he never delivered.
No, he didn't write about you, but he wrote the journey he did from traveling in Yunnan, talking about the Catholic
different.
churches, and sounds wonderful.
Right.
Is that one of your routes?
That is one of our routes. But I have to say, actually, I don't need to do any work to try to make somebody write it. The place, the story speak for itself. And so when he went there, he was totally, he was not going to write anything. While China was not mentioned in the story.
No,
but it was.
I knew that because I read the story. Yeah.
Right, but it was the area. I mean, how exotic can it be? A Tibetan area, tucked in between the Salween River, which is the river from China flows westwards into Myanmar, and the Mekong, which again from Yunnan going southwards into Vietnam. And those mountain ranges in between are scattered Tibetan villages and communities scattered in those valleys.
That's the route to the French missionaries.
Yes, the French missionaries. They rode donkeys over 3 or 4 days to get from one side to the other. And so I decided I quite liked that area. I'm fascinated by Yunnan, Yunnan girl. So we went along that route, and you come to these Tibetan churches. They're still active. The Tibetans would be in the churches. Catholic churches, yes. But they're all Tibetans in there singing their songs.
You don't always associate the Tibetans with the Catholics.
That's right. Yeah. But when you listen to their songs, you would know those songs from the West, except they were singing everything in Tibetan.
This brings us to the end of part 1. Tomorrow, you can watch part 2, where May will give us advice how to get the best out of China. Stay tuned.